Welcome back to Direct Station. I am Kate Carey. Hi, everybody. Hey, listen, I gotta tell you, I simply did not have it in me to single-handedly pull off an episode this week. It's been a lot, hasn't it? I found myself trying to make it work with everything the eclipse brought, and well, no, it just really wasn't an option. If you were born as I was in late summer or early fall 1971, your Pluto is at 29 degrees of Virgo, where this eclipse was. And while Pluto, being Mr. Intense, Mr. Transformation, hanging out with an eclipsing sun real close to my ascendant, I'm a Virgo rising, has been chef's kiss astrology manifesting in my life in palpable ways. All is well. It's just intense and transformational. So I didn't have it in me to do the kind of episode you're used to, but there are many of you being kind enough to show up and think with me weekly. So it felt shitty to not say hi and explain myself a little and offer a little bit of what I'm thinking about and noticing as events around us continue to unfold. First things first, endings and beginnings. The theme of eclipse season. Seeing it all around me. Friends with jobs suddenly changing or ending, friends with relationships suddenly changing or ending, or a family member with a dire situation suddenly becoming significantly less dire, or finding that the perfectionism they've relied on is either no longer available or no longer relevant, right? Please remember, if these sorts of things are happening in your world right now, it is part of the unfolding of your evolution in this lifetime. Everything that is occurring is for your ascension and mine, for your furtherance on your life path, for your development towards fulfilling your assignment. That's a beautiful thing, even if it's made sometimes of an unpleasantly bumpy road. Or, for many of us, a road that feels filled with despair, frankly, right? Some roads aren't paved yet, man. And the entire point of an eclipse at 29 degrees of Virgo is to learn about letting go, to learn about where you've been holding on too tight, the places where your control or your rigidity, which for me is most places, are no longer needed or appropriate. It's nice to be forced to let go once in a while, isn't it? My mom's version of this was the smallest thing. She lost her phone. She's a flight attendant and could easily be mistaken for a full-blooded Virgo because she's quite into control and quite into perfection. And she was on a trip, and suddenly the phone was gone. What was she to do? What was she to do but surrender for 24 hours? And that's honestly kind of the point with eclipses and eclipse season, in which we remain for the rest of this week. Where are you seeing signs that some part of your life is asking you to let go? Movement begins when we let go. We become who we're supposed to be when we let go. We evolve, we ascend. And the central project of 2025 and 2026 is the ascension of humanity. We are rising to a new level through this grueling process. Think about what consciousness that you have now that you didn't have a year ago. You get more stuff, right? You understand more of what's happening around you, within you, near you today than you did a year or two ago, and certainly before COVID, right? It's not all for nothing, friends. And I know you noticed the ways in which this eclipse season has escalated our political situation, right? Not just the murder and martyrdom of a white supremacist Christian nationalist, but the disappearance of a familiar face in our late night lives, which seems like it might have been short-lived. But then we also have this elaborate pageant that went on Sunday during the fucking eclipse itself, right? Like peak eclipse was peak pageant. And that pageant was much more than a memorial service, which was the nationalizing of a very particular brand of Christianity, the mainstreaming of conservative evangelical Christianity, the honest to God nationalizing of the new apostolic reformation, and the independent charismatic broadcast, like a State of the Union, into our living rooms. This was the plan, of course, and the murder of a favorite voice created reason and momentum to that project. It escalated it, in fact. I keep thinking about that Will Ferrell moment as Ron Burgundy in the show where he's a newscaster, and he goes, boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, it really got out of hand fast. Indeed it did. Indeed it did, Ron Burgundy. But listen, the hits are going to keep coming. As I record this, I'm noticing that the Supreme Court is allowing Trump to fire the last Democratic member of the Federal Trade Commission. Something like that comes across once a day, right? They're canceling the tracking of the number of Americans with food insecurity. The president of Texas A&M is stepping down over a children's literature course that included a text that recognized more than two genders because a student recorded herself fighting with the professor and put it online, right? Like the hits keep coming. And here's how I've decided to think about it. I've started to nod when I see it. I'm starting to say, oh, yeah, I see. It's escalated again each day, right? Tick, tick, tick. That makes me anxious because what is this roller coaster we're strapped to, right? And where's it going? I see these things and I see the quickening pace. And I know with my whole body that we are getting closer. Don't you? Don't we all? Isn't it amazing to feel it rise? Scary, sure. But what a moment to live through. What a moment to tell our grandchildren about. What a moment to learn what we're made of. You know, I've always loved history and stories from historical moments. During COVID and its lockdowns and its periodic 5 to 7 days of lying uselessly in bed, I went down this long tunnel into World War II, the documentaries, the books, the scholars, the films. So I learned more than I had, but mostly I learned more than I had known. Like I started to better understand what that period of time and the choices people made and how the role it played in the identities and sense of self for people, for nations, for alliances. But I started to understand humans more, humans under pressure, humans at war. By 2022, Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine started and it brought these things to life on the same land in a new way. And then October 7th happened and a layer of horror was unlocked, right? And now this absurd, horrible, unconscionable, detestable thing that the Israeli government just persists with. I mean, my God, the horror, the persistent and unthinkable horror. But these events for me are all connected to what I've been learning and studying by continuing to study war and power over, as I've done for so long. These events helped me to remember a few things. Thinking about them today, because I had Netflix going yesterday while I was writing. It's a thing with me. I like war or action movies on in the background. There's this one with Jamie Foxx and Channing Tatum. I think that's his name. Yes, Channing Tatum. It's called White House Down. I could watch it in the background every day. It's funny, it's cute, it's heroic. The guys are, solving the problems. Anyway, I like having these things playing in the background. On my TV yesterday, though, came a few things, but two of them were the movie Munich, The Edge of War, and the lovely short series, The Light We Cannot See, which is about the bombing and liberation of Saint-Malo on the French coast, both during the war, right? So these productions reminded me of this trope in any movies having anything to do with Nazis. And that is the fear people feel around the Nazi soldiers and the cruel treatment of people at the hands of Nazis. You guys, I have always thought that those were caricatures, not the stories we tell ourselves about this entire group of people. Like, obviously, some of them did these horrible things and they were just following orders, right? And they were horrible themselves, right? I truly did not understand, did not learn until very, very, very recently, not in my bones anyway, the ways in which mass delusion, plus the dehumanizing of entire groups of people, plus guns, plus like a wayward masculinity that gets, I don't know, like it gets kind of, you can get kind of high on it, right? At the sudden dramatic increase of power and authority. But like the combination of these things and the ease that then comes with harming other people's bodies, ruining other people's lives. We're seeing it now, obviously, not just in Gaza or Donetsk, but in front of IHOPs and in the stories emerging from 2/3 of Alligator Alcatraz detainees having disappeared. And the way Stephen Miller looks around him, and he spits disgust for anyone who doesn't believe as he does. So yes, the racial markers, of course, but also now the thoughts. If you have these thoughts, these beliefs, these habits, you are scum. You are less than human. We've watched the discourse escalate, right? And so here we are at a place where anyone who doesn't sign up for the policies of this radical, violent theocracy is not human. We can tolerate the cries or the emotions or the reactions of animals as we gather, cage, and even slaughter them because we know in our hearts that they are not worthy of oxygen, of peace, of happiness. That's the thinking. We've always read about or heard about it, or seen it in movies about Stalin's Russia or Hitler's occupations or Rwanda or Cambodia or Darfur or China in the 20th and 21st centuries. But now we're seeing whole groups of people take the step to move from being regular people, imagining a righteous war, into like these licensed protectors of a newly defined purity and justice. And man, that is terrifying and upsetting. But it's also like, God, wow, that was so easy, right? Like once people flip to save their incomes or their status or their relationships, and boom, they're just okay with this kind of overnight. I do believe, though, with everything that I am, that they could pop out of it just as easily. I came across this lovely woman on YouTube this morning who is telling her story of waking up from the nightmare of MAGA, of finally and completely drifting away and setting up a new, albeit challenging life outside of that hateful bubble. It's painful, but simple, right? So I live in hope, which annoys some of my dearest friends. but the cruelty depends on dehumanization, right? And dehumanization depends on the delusion. And as something is rising that could burst the bubble of delusion, maybe a whole bunch of people could stop and stand still and realize what has happened. There are stories of men in Rwanda waking up and realizing that the blood on their hands is wrong. A dear friend of mine who has traveled there and witnessed such things, the act of former perpetrators are loving and caring for and being forgiven by their victims, right? Like this is all possible. We all want a life where we feel loved, where our sins are forgiven, where we belong. The delusion holds so well because it is a form of belonging. Belonging. Everybody made fun of us when we tried to switch the disruptive patterns of DEI 1.0 into a more loving version at 2.0, which was about belonging, right? So these, so we started using these activities to promote simple belonging, right? But man, that's it, I think. That is the ball game, actually. Am I seen as human here? Are my priorities valued here? Are my contributions worth something here? Can I be in relationship here? Can I be loved here? So that's what I'm thinking about. I get a lot of hateful comments, and then I also get a lot of men putting clown emojis. This is a thing, I guess. I can tell you your ideas are dumb and drop a clown emoji and walk away. Like that's a thing. So it's not so much that I have thin skin, which can be true, certainly, in the right circumstances. It's more that I'm just so shocked. I know I sound like I'm joining the internet in 2025. I'm just so shocked, though, as how callously mean and dismissive people can be and like send insults that have nothing to do with the ideas represented in the video, you know? And so when they send these, I always open the account and I look. And lots of time there's nothing there as a bot or someone hiding, but lots of times it's a person with a whole account, like a whole life represented online. And when you look at their stuff, it's often personal. It's often got kids and friends and partners. It's got themes of things they love or care about. Like if you open my personal Instagram account, you would see a lot of trees and a lot of teenagers and a lot of ocean. So like you can open and look at the lives and priorities and really the values, the things that matter to this person. And it's really often things I value too, or hobbies I can't relate to, but I can see, that these cars you're working on make you very proud or happy. Oh, the summit you gained last summer was a huge moment for you, right? So then I engage in Tonglen, looking at these people and knowing the name for them. as trolls, but once you open their account, you can't really call them that because they're human. They're human to me. They are. They are. But yeah, isn't that the only way out of this? Isn't our own persistent humanity the only way out of it? Isn't our ability to value people who disagree with us, to assert their right to a rule of law and all of its inconveniences? Isn't our ability to tolerate the hate speech of other people the way we continue to live in a country where we too can be free? Yeah, I don't want to hate them all. I fear a bunch of them. And I wish Stephen Miller could be chained and barred from his criminal actions and intentions. But like these men who spend a bunch of their time as part of an online mob, I pity them. I pity their karma, their loneliness, and the hole in their lives that leads them to want to fill it with such negativity. Like negative attention is as useful to a lonely heart as positive intention, right? We know this. So if I look at their faces, it helps me to remember that. It reminds me to leverage the Tibetan Buddhist technique of Tonglen. If you don't know what that is, I've said it before, but I'll just repeat it because it really is an incredibly valuable exercise. It's not for everyone. In in the study of Tibetan Buddhism, one of your opportunities is to, or one of a sort of a rite of passage is to take what's called a bodhisattva vow. And the bodhisattva vow is a commitment to hang around and help out until we all get across, until we all rise, until we all gain enough consciousness to enter nirvana, right? And so the bodhisattva vow is saying, if I were to achieve enough consciousness that I too could cross into nirvana, I would not go. I would stay. I would stay and help until the last of us can go. And so from that commitment, then there's this practice called Tonglen, which is, and this works great with a boss or a coworker or a roommate or a child or a spouse or a neighbor, just anybody who like their behavior feels unacceptable to you and even oppressive to you, disrespectful to you, harmful to you, right? So the practice is I look at this person, I imagine them in my mind's eye, or in this case, staring into their Instagram face. And I try to locate their suffering. I try to locate the part of them that is in pain, the part of them that has unresolved trauma, has unhealed injury, has loneliness, has sadness, has grief, right? Whatever it is, what is their suffering? What are they suffering from? And I try to locate it. I try to find it. And you can, if you look at somebody long enough or think about your experiences with them long enough, you can usually find it. Anyway, Pluto at 29 degrees. Well, Virgo on my ascendant makes it a really easy project for me to locate the suffering of people. And so when I do that, I then the Tonglen practice is to breathe it in, right? So to inhale that person's suffering, to take, if it's possible, just the slightest, smallest layer of it off of them. Breathe it into yourself and use yourself as a filter, not to hold their suffering. You have enough of your own, right? But to use your body as a filter through which some part of this energy of this person's suffering can be absorbed back into the universe, right? Back into the stardust from whence we all came, right? So to take some piece of that energy out of that person and then to, with generosity of spirit, with love, with loving kindness, to breathe some part of your own joy, your own ease, your own play, your own love, your own bliss, like something that feels beautiful and good and worth being alive for. And you send it back to this person, right? And in so doing, you're sort of like participating in this person's humanity. You are experiencing this person's humanity. You are reminding yourself of this person's humanity. And you are reminding yourself of the amount of joy you actually do have in your own life and in your own body, right? And you can find that generosity of spirit and sort of hand it back to this person. And if you do it a few times in a row, just sitting there 5-10 minutes or something like that, your feeling about that person and how you're going to work with them shifts. It really does. So it reminds me to have compassion for myself and for people I love. Because my goodness, what a thing to live through while needing to pay bills and go to work and take care of what you love, right? It is so much what we are living through. It is so much. That's all I wanted to say to you this week, or I'll have the energy for anyway. But see what you can let go of. Notice the escalation each day and find a place inside you that can actually lean into the escalation and welcome it, because it means the action in this novel is continuing to rise and get us where we need to be for the climax, where dehumanizing violence and control is defeated. Notice that dehumanization project and how easily it leads to just mean and horrible violence. See who you've dehumanized and play with Tonglen and squint and tilt your head and see what compassion is possible for this person. See what you're living through and acknowledge the breadth and depth of it, the whole body experience of it, the fear and the hope and the fury and the despair and the love of it all. Notice how hard it is. Notice where it gives you new ideas about what could be. Notice how it's making your knowledge and your consciousness shift and increase. Notice, y'all. Okay, I'm going, but you can't, I can't go without a poem. So I've got two little bits to read to you today. This is just a little tiny excerpt from this amazing essay by a woman named Nita Penfold. It's called "The Woman with the Wild Grown Hair Relaxes After Another Long Day." And in it, she's musing about, the character that she's writing is in a warm, bubbly bathtub. And it says, she thinks of Job's unnamed wife, caught between a righteous husband and his war between God and Satan. How that woman must have tried to smother the heavenly fire with her mantle as it destroyed their sheep and servants, and fiercely dug at the stones that killed her 10 children when the great wind breathed from the wilderness to topple their home. How she tended Job's sores, washing him gently with cool water, soothing the flame of Satan's tongue, comforting him, and how she stood alone while he debated his faith with God, proving himself again worthy. We're witnessing, right, battles between men and their gods. We're witnessing battles between gods and men. We're witnessing battles wherein men are trying to prove their value, prove their worth, prove their usefulness in this world, find some meaning where there hasn't been enough, right? And here we are witnessing it and knowing that soon we will need to participate. I'm going to read two excerpts from a poem called "The Low Road" by Marge Piercy. Marge Piercy is some of the best poems ever. So if you don't know her work, you should. Anyway, it starts like this. What can they do to you? Whatever they want. They can set you up. They can bust you. They can break your fingers. I'll stop there. She goes quite a bit further. Here's how she ends the poem. But two people fighting back to back can cut through a mob. An army can meet an army. Two people can keep each other sane, can give support, conviction, love, massage, hope, sex. Three people are a delegation, a committee, a wedge. With four, you can play bridge and start an organization. With six, you can rent a whole house, eat pie for dinner with no seconds, and hold a fundraising party. A dozen makes a demonstration. 100 fills a hall. 1,000 has solidarity and your own newsletter. 10,000 power, that's us, y'all. Power and your own paper. 100,000 your own media. 10 million your own country. It goes on one at a time. It starts when you care to act. It starts when you do it again after they said no. It starts when you say we and know what you mean. And each day you mean one more. It's good, right? All right, y'all. Thanks for listening. Sorry it wasn't as much as usual. I just wanted to say hi and tell you what I'm thinking. And I'll be back next week with a regular episode. Let me know if you want to do a reading or experience some coaching. Oh, and would you please write a review and help the thing grow and send it to somebody you care about who you think might find it useful. And join me in all the places and follow me in all the places to help the whole thing grow. Okay, that's all. Until next time, be well, be conscious, and be kind. I will see you soon. Take care.